Lena Headey is Yorkie female Bruce Willis. Prove me wrong.
Prove you wrong, like the guy with coffee in the park.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. Okay. There's got to be. Can't we just like grassroots gin up some kind of like replacement for that? Because it's a great.
Yeah, I don't know.
Meme, but promoting Steven Crowder is not great.
No.
Back to my original point.
I don't think I can prove you wrong.
She just has this. I don't think they have a similar career trajectory, but they're similar. Now, when she's as old as he is, maybe she will do some of the things that he's doing now, which is basically just sleepwalking through his films and being very uninteresting as a performer, But they've both got this thing where, and this is just based off of, watching 2 seasons of the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yes.
And I guess a lot of Game of Thrones, although she does it less in Game of Thrones, where somebody will say something and then she has a response. It's like, well, I guess you don't have all the answers then, huh? And then she kind of turns back to the person and kind of tilts her head and kind of
squints
a little bit at him and sets her jaw. It's just like, I've seen Bruce Willis do that a million times.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, John, being a mother is more than just protecting someone. She does that little thing. Anyway, I think she's great.
Yeah, she is great.
And gosh darn, I wish that show had lasted longer.
Sarah Connor Chronicles?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we talked about it in shows that we thought were canceled before their time. I think that was one of my picks.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So.
And it's funny because, I'm on a rewatch of it right now, and there's a lot of talent there that would end up in other places. Josh Friedman, of course, has done a lot of stuff, and it was kind of his baby. And they took the Enterprise in a lot of interesting directions. Tony Graffia was a co-producer and wrote a lot of the stuff, and she also works on Outlander now, and so she's done a lot of genre TV. Works with Ronald Moore a lot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it's just like it was ahead of its time.
Yeah,
and they made the bold choice to cast Shirley Manson as the villain of season 2 for some reason.
I know.
Not an actress.
No, not really.
Was not an actress after that show.
No,
maybe for good reason.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
very striking looking as
well. Yeah, of course, it served her well.
Yeah. So, and maybe that's all they were really going for in that role.
Yeah.
Someone who's drop dead gorgeous.
Striking.
Right.
And only wearing 25% of her usual makeup.
Right. Exactly. We don't want to overdo the eyeliner.
Sarah says that anybody who is not wearing 2 million sunblocks is going to have a real bad day.
Yeah,
but Shirley's going to be fine. She'll just be standing there.
Right. Exactly.
With her clown grease paint makeup.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. I love Shirley Manson.
Yes.
What's she up to? They're still together, right? Garbage?
I think so.
We're going all over the shop here.
I think they are still together. I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah. Still making bad music.
Yeah.
there's only how many albums are in any band?
I know. I think they ran out.
Yeah.
At some point.
They hit hard and faded.
Yeah. I don't know. Some people felt like, what was it? Beautiful Garbage felt like that was like too far, or like that's
too far. You've gone too far. Butch
Vig. No, that was not a very good album for the band. It's real hit and miss. Yeah.
It's real hit and miss.
It is. And
Bleed Like Me.
I know. There was an acquaintance of mine in college. It came out when I was in college, and he was like, "Oh man, I did not like that album," and it's kind of turned him off from the band, and he found out that I bought it. And
we weren't friends when you were in college.
No.
Oh.
But he was like, "Oh, I wish you had told me before he bought it. I would have just given it to you."
Less beautiful, more garbage.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we've got a lot of garbage to talk about on this show today, the Just Enough Trope podcast. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mika Nana.
And we got a lot to get through, so let's get while the getting is pretty good, acceptable. We've got some news to talk about, of course.
Yes.
Probably the biggest part of that news is talking about the Avengers Endgame trailer.
Yes.
Which, I mean, we're not prophets, but I think we have said, or did say repeatedly, that, the second Captain Marvel comes out and it's all squared away, we're going to get ourselves a trailer. And
right.
we did.
Yeah.
And this is the last trailer because the thing comes out in a couple months.
End of April.
And still tells us nothing. We don't know anything about the movie. So
We
but save it.
A little more.
We'll talk about it when we talk about the news. Also, we've got a review of the first couple episodes of a new Netflix series. We've reported on this before on the show, an anthology series called Love, Death, Robots.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that. And also we will be talking about in Comic Book Club today what do you even call it? I mean, I guess it's a trade because it's a collection.
It's a graphic novel.
We say it's one of the graphic novels that really started the graphic novel craze. Does anybody say craze anymore? I don't even know. I just did. But when you think of like the top tier graphic novels, it's definitely there. But it was not and was never intended to be a graphic novel. What is it? It's V for Vendetta.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. And then finally, sometimes big mistakes lead to great lakes. Is that nothing?
I don't know if that's a thing or not.
They can lead to good things.
Yes.
I had originally planned to talk to today's guest on the show, Jeremy Stomberg, a.k.a. John Maddening, about Star Trek. He was going to be on Enterprising Individuals, my Star Trek show, enterprisingindividuals.com, and a little snafu diddly-oo by this Deuterino right here led to me not being prepared for that talk. And instead, I wasn't worried because I knew that he's a really interesting guy, and we ended up talking about his involvement with First Wrestling and primarily with the Minnesota Roller Girls. He's
Nice.
one of the voices of the Minnesota Roller Girls. So we talk about those two things, just sort of grassroots kind of fandom. They're both local sort of do-it-yourself promotions that he's been involved in. His personal nerddom and video games and things like that. We talk about his connection with CONvergence as well.
Sure.
So he is one of the people who helped start CONvergence.
That's pretty cool.
I think I've talked to about 75% of those people now. I have a
Sure.
bingo card, and I'm just getting every square
You're
on
just
it. So
punching
here's
holes.
another one,
Yeah.
and I had a great talk with Jeremy. What's going on? How you doing? What are you reading?
I'm doing good. Pretty much the same as last week. I'm still reading Ms. Marvel comics and reading the Fairyland books. The third one is what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Let's see. I just read V for Vendetta for the first time.
Well, yeah.
So we'll talk about that. But are you reading anything interesting, Cal?
Oh, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I am. I finished Scud,
Okay.
and I'm now reading Concrete. You ever heard of Concrete?
No.
There is, oh boy. So there's this guy, Paul Chadwick. He's a writer and illustrator, and he created this character called Concrete, and it was in like the mid to late 80s, I believe.
Okay.
And it was published by, I don't know, Fantagraphics, or is that a thing? Like just some indie publisher.
Okay.
And he was kind of one of the first, so V for Vendetta, like one of the craze, whatever we decided it was,
Right.
for graphic novels.
Classic graphic novel.
He was one of the pillars of sort of independent comics at the time. And so,
Okay.
you've got like your Strangers in Paradise or your Bone or your Cerberus or whatever.
Sure.
Cerebus. I can't believe I did that. There's Concrete. What is Concrete? I'll tell you. This guy is probably a lot like Paul Chadwick. He is like a writer. He's like a speech writer, and
Okay.
he is abducted by aliens,
Okay.
and his brain is put into a large body that looks like if you grinded the edges off the Michelin Man.
Oh, okay.
And he basically like now just lives as this guy called Concrete, and the government like is kind of worried about the implications of this.
Sure.
So they've told the public that he's a cyborg, and he has to basically like live, just lie to people and say he's a cyborg. And
Okay.
it's kind of commentary on the media, but their strategy is they're going to oversaturate people with concrete so that they stop asking questions, basically. Kind of like
okay.
let it hide in, plain sight
Sure.
type thing. So while he maintains this other persona, he's allowed to just live his life. And he's one of his heroes is like Richard Burton, not the actor, the explorer. And he always
Okay.
wanted to explore. So wants to live his life as a like a hardcore Michael Palin, basically. You know, like uses his body to, like, he can walk underwater and he can climb Mount Everest and he can write all these travelogues. And then it's just basically Chadwick himself. It's semi-autobiographical because Chadwick himself is like a real thoughtful kind of spiritual guy and travels a lot. And so it's sort of like parallels. Like, you know, I'm sure he, like, there's this, I just read an issue where he goes to Nepal and tries to climb Mount Everest. And there's a lot of detail in the people and the villages that he goes to and talks to.
Sure.
So I'm like, well, Paul Chadwick probably went to
right.
Nepal at some point, yeah, or Tibet, yeah. So, yeah, and it's just really interesting. Like, what happens in it? Does he shoot guns or fight crime? No. It's just a real thoughtful, boring, exactly what you would think of as, like, an independent comic.
Okay.
And I totally passed it by when I was younger. Also, just I didn't have access to it. You go to the rack and you see X-Men and Justice League, and nobody's ordering, like, Concrete. You're going to have to go downtown or something for that, you know?
Sure.
So I just never read it. And I got my hands on some collected editions. There's, like, 7 books that basically take all the highlights of, like, Concrete. There's some stuff that's probably not in there. But,
okay, I see.
And so I'm kind of going through that. Yeah,
okay.
It's interesting.
Oh, cool. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I said, it's really thoughtful. And, like, there's this one thing. He fields a lot of requests because basically his life is just to be interesting now. And so people write to him and say, like, hey, come on my show. Come on my podcast.
Okay.
We'll talk about Star Trek unless I forget. But he gets a letter from a family who are like, you know, we're a farm family. We're farmers, and we're having money trouble, and we've got, like, some loans or something. We got some investments that are going to mature next year, but we might be broke by we may not make it to next year if we don't get some help. So do you think you could, like, come help us? And so he does, and he gets involved with his family, and their tractors are broke, but he's got super strength, so he can plow the fields. And then he starts to get to know this family better, but he starts to learn that, like, everything's not really what it seems. And there's a lot of, like, resentment, and there's a lot of, like, secrets and things in the family. And so he just kind of, it's an anthology kind of. He just goes from situation to situation, you know, like The Fugitive, you know, or Quantum Leap or something like that, and gets involved in these little dramas in these people's lives.
That sounds cool.
It's no Ms. Marvel, but so far, I'm kind of liking it.
Oh, good. That sounds interesting. Very good. So, yeah. I don't know if I've read anything.
Come on, turn over. Come on, baby.
I don't know if I've read anything quite like that before.
Well, you should try it out.
Okay.
Let's try the news. Okay, well, we've got a couple important stories here in no particular order.
Sure.
We'll talk about the Avengers trailer in just a bit, but I thought that it would be important to talk about the Space Avengers and the fact that James Gunn is returning to Marvel Disney to direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah. This was kind of surprising news to me, especially after Disney made such a big deal out of firing him last summer. I never thought in a million years that they would rehire him. And I think you also mentioned they did not issue an apology or anything such thing like that. But he
Not
is
that I've seen.
No, but he is working for them again.
I think that's the deal. We're not going to apologize, but you can come back.
Right. And that we heard, I think maybe last week or a week before, that they were going to be using the script that Gunn had worked on.
Well, yeah, we'd known about that.
But still, I think it's a big surprise that he is back directing. What do you think?
I think that he was, say what you will about his edgy, stupid, tweets.
Right.
Should he lose an entire franchise for this? And say what you will about the merits of cancel culture and the way that we can utilize it positively. Mm-hmm. This seems like, he was specifically the target of like right-wing bad actors.
He was.
In this. So, yeah. I don't know. Seems like justice, right?
Yeah.
My only thing is that I do find him a little sexist. Maybe not toxically so, but,
right.
He tells this, maybe this is the only way that Guardians work, but you got this story about this bro-y dude who is always caught in it's like Tony Stark. Is he really going to be responsible? If he was really responsible, he would let somebody else be Iron Man, and he would come home to Pepper and he would raise a family and all that. But we don't really want him to do that, right?
Right.
And so for Guardians of the Galaxy, you have this whole thing where the idea is you've got this character like Star-Lord who is really toxically masculine.
Yes.
And we keep the end of 2 movies so far has been, I got to stop doing that. Everybody's going to love me more if I stop doing that. And
Right.
then next movie, we're right back in.
Yeah.
So, that if that's the only kind of story James Gunn can tell, then thanks for 2 pretty good ones. Maybe get somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe see what somebody else does.
Yeah.
And now we'll never know.
No.
We'll never know.
No, we'll never know.
So, I don't know. I'm happy sad.
You happy sad?
I'm happy sad about it.
Okay. All right.
But he's, of course he has, but he's been pretty, what's the word I'm
Chill?
looking for? Chill. Yeah, he's so chill. He's come back, on his knees.
Yeah.
Still, it's not like
Yeah.
he's spiking the football or anything. He's being real like, this is a great opportunity. Thanks again. Sorry for this, sorry for that. So
Right. And I mean, I do think it was definitely like right-wing trolls who like helped get him fired in the first place. And I mean, no, he shouldn't have said those things, but how many years ago were they? And, and we take into account like the type of person that somebody was like.
okay, he's not Jean Valjean.
I know.
He's just a guy who who worked for Troma or whatever, who, oh boy, what a bastion of female representation that is. So, you know what I mean? Just consider the source.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure we'll see in his next gum snapping video,
Right.
With his 25-year-old model actress girlfriend.
Right.
I'm sure he'll have plenty to say about
I'm
where
sure
we're
he
going to go.
will.
It's all money. What kills me, I know that I think you're surprised that, like, I can't believe that the mouse would put its big round yellow shoe down and then pull it back up again.
Yes.
I can't believe that they couldn't find anybody else to crack it. Like, they've got his
I know.
script. They've got the actors are all on contract, so it doesn't matter what Dave Bautista says. I mean, he probably has to come back no matter what.
Right.
Maybe Disney was just, first of all, Taika Waititi said no, and I'll tell you why in a little bit.
Okay.
And then also, so they couldn't get anybody else to crack it in that exact way that they wanted. This is going to be a big thing going forward. Mm-hmm. They just had Captain Marvel come out, which I think, oh, by the way, it's up to $760 million worldwide.
Oh, wow.
So this is
Okay.
another Black Panther, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people are like, this could have been a little better movie. The movie's all right. This has been great.
Right.
And so that, Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Eternals, the whole cosmic side is so important for the next cycle of whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah.
And if they can't nail it, they're screwed.
Yeah.
And so let's bring the guy back that can nail it.
Right.
And I think they also weighed having the next round of interviews for the press tour for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, having everybody's interview start off with, well, we were sad, but we're glad now that Kenneth Branagh or whoever,
Right.
Why not just skip all that, bring James Gunn back, and
Right.
then it'll just be focused on the product, and
Right.
not the drama.
No. Yeah.
My thing is, I didn't have the foresight to see that you were going to have to do this and look dumb
Yeah.
later
I know.
on.
I know.
It's dumb. Don't be dumb.
Yeah.
James Gunn, everybody.
Don't
Mickey
be
Mouse,
dumb. Yeah.
Dave Bautista,
Yeah.
nobody be dumb. So anyway, now he's doing Suicide Squad and this. So
I know.
He's playing both sides.
Yes.
Anyway, let's move on. More Disney news. Disney CEO Bob Iger has said that Fox films will still be made under the Fox name. They're going to keep the brand.
Ever or?
Well, for now, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Fox and Fox Searchlight will continue, and also FX will remain FX.
Okay.
So they're just going to sock puppet this thing, I guess.
I guess. It's kind of a weird choice, but all right.
Does that mean Sweet D is a Disney princess? That's what I need to know.
I don't even know who Sweet D is.
From It's Always Sunny.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Any other Marvel movie news? Doesn't look like it. I got a little DC movie news, though.
Okay.
No, it looks like Ezra Miller is working with Grant Morrison on a new Flash movie script.
He's helping to write it?
Yes.
Okay.
He needs this to get done before he's 35 and is too old to play a
Well,
young Barry Allen.
Yeah, I guess. I just
Remember this. He shot those like, bro, you gotta. Lois is the key. He shot those scenes 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Like this is, he's got a longer tenure playing this than Peter Capaldi played the Doctor. At
Yeah,
this point.
you're
Like,
right.
He's been the Flash forever
Yeah.
with no film.
Yeah.
To show for it.
This is true. So I guess I can understand why he would want to step up and help write it, but it seems unusual at the same time.
Yeah, it does.
So, okay. All right.
It's reportedly going to be a darker take.
Why?
I know.
Didn't we just learn from Aquaman that's not the way to go?
And it's the Flash. Although, so it's Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
Because Grant Morrison is really trying to get into the screenwriting side now, I think.
Okay.
With like Happy and everything. Okay, well, I mean, you don't have to love Happy, but it's
I don't.
Grant Morrison. It's okay. All right. Ooh, he's off. So anyway, yeah. So I trust Grant Morrison to do something interesting with Flash. There's definitely Flash has gotten darker, in the past couple of years, thanks to Jeff Johns and my dad killed my mom, and
Right.
I'm going to rip somebody's head off and
Right.
drink their blood real fast or whatever. Like it's it's gotten that way.
Yeah.
I lied. I do have some Marvel movie news. It's been announced that the Shang-Chi movie is going forward, and they just got a director. The director is Destin Daniel Cretton.
Okay. What else has he directed?
He has directed some films like Short Term 12, which is a movie that I often kick around on this show.
Okay.
Also, The Glass Castle. And that's about it. He hasn't directed a ton of movies.
The Glass Castle, that's based on a memoir, right?
Yes, and both of
Okay.
those films that I named star Brie Larson.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I didn't like Short Term 12.
Oh, you did not?
No, but people talk about it as like being really great. It's funny because it reminds me a lot of Half Nelson, which Bowden and Fleck
Right.
wrote and directed, and they did Captain Marvel. And so Marvel they're committed to this. Yes, they will bring back people who do Facebook Live videos,
Yeah.
but they'll still continuing their practice of like chicken hawking like young directors who have had like one kind
Yeah.
of indie smash under their belt, and then
Right.
whoop, you're mine now.
Right.
So that's what's going on here. He is Asian American, I should point out.
Okay. Well, that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know much about Shang-Chi. I think you said martial arts. That's about it.
Yep, he's Bruce
Okay.
Lee basically.
Okay.
He's Bruce Lee, and technically he is like the grandson of Fu Manchu or something like that.
Okay.
Like he's connected to the
Fu
Sax Romer
Manchu. All
character
right.
Fu Manchu, who is a problematic character.
Yes.
Now, there's been all kinds of like attempts to sort of, we can't really modernize it. He's literally, an opium lord,
Right.
in Hong Kong, Imperial Hong Kong. Yeah, I mean, there's a take it back it kind of element to it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like
Yeah.
Bruce Lee made all those chopsaki films where Asian actors would play any old nationality that was
Right.
required, and so I
Right.
mean, if he doesn't care, if they don't care, then I guess it's fine.
I guess.
So I think that and plus he's kind of like a jet setting kind of. There's a spy kind of element to his thing.
Okay.
It just kind of folded a lot of like 70s chopsaki stuff and like blaxploitation, and it's like a Luke Cage Shang-Chi like meetup would be like real awesome.
Okay. Sure.
You've got like the Shaft side, and then you've got like the Enter the Dragon side.
Sure. I can see it.
Those movies are like more than 50 years old at this point.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really hard to believe.
Yeah, it'd be like in the middle of the 80s, you're like, oh, that Charlie Chaplin, fresher than ever. Not quite. What else is going on? All right, so I'll tell you my Taika Waititi news.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi is actually adapting Time Bandits for TV.
Oh, I think I'd heard that somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Why did he decide to go with Time Bandits?
Probably because he loves Time Bandits.
I guess. Yeah. Funny.
Yeah. Should this be done at all? Period.
I don't know. I remember seeing Time Bandits and thinking it was okay. Maybe that's a little harsh.
All right.
But I didn't think it was super great. But then again, maybe I just didn't see it at a really influential age. So, I don't know that it needs to be done. What do you think?
I don't think it needs to be done.
Okay.
Then what's the new take on Time Bandits?
I don't know if there is one.
No, and like Terry Gilliam even like walked away from a sequel to the film, mostly because Christopher, the wizard, the guy,
wizard?
that actor,
Yeah.
the little person actor killed himself, and then he was a big part of the first one, and Gilliam wanted to make the sequel like center around his character, and then he was like, oh well, let's just quit.
Okay.
So
yeah, that makes it
anyway,
difficult.
yeah, and this is going to be for Apple TV, of course.
Oh boy, I don't know how I feel about Apple TV.
You haven't seen it yet.
I know. I suppose that's true.
So yeah, I don't know how to feel either. What else have we got? We talked about American Gods last week. It looks like American Gods will be getting a third season.
Oh, okay.
And they have brought on Charles Eglee to be the showrunner.
Who is that?
He has worked previously for Hemlock Grove and The Walking Dead, so two top-notch shows.
Or genre
to take
shows.
The load off of Neil Gaiman's skinny pale shoulders.
Yeah.
Leather-jacketed shoulders.
Yes.
So, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess Neil Gaiman needs some help, so...
I'm still liking the second season.
Yeah, I'm liking it too.
Yeah.
So...
what else? I think that's pretty much it. You don't want to hear about a new Dungeons and Dragons movie, do you?
Why wouldn't I?
Paramount has been working on a new Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's tentatively set for July of 2021 release date.
Oh, wow.
And we don't know anything else, but we know that they are looking to land somebody, like some top talent.
Jeremy Irons, perhaps.
Or Jeremy's Iron. No, I think they're thinking of like a Joe Manganiello, a Vin Diesel, a...
Oh, okay, sure.
Karen Page.
Doesn't Vin Diesel like actually play Dungeons and Dragons?
You've got it.
Yeah.
That guy with the leather bracelets.
Yeah.
I don't even know his name.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see if they can actually do this well, I guess is the question.
Well, you know the story of the making of that Dungeons and Dragons movie, right?
I don't know if I know the story.
Well, I guess you'll have to go back and listen to our show about it.
Okay.
In our backlog.
All
but
right.
It has a long, tortured path
Yes.
to the screen, and there's a reason that it is as bad as it is.
Yes.
What else? Oh, speaking of Apple, Apple is going to have an announcement event on the 25th, which is late this week, and they're expected to give more details about their TV service at that point.
Okay, sure. They love doing these big announcements with like different technologies and stuff like that. Now they got TV to announce too, so why not smush that in there?
So dramatic.
Yeah.
Apple, more like poisoned apple, like evil queen in Snow White.
Yes.
What? Let's talk about the Avengers Endgame trailer.
Let's. I almost cried when I saw it.
Almost?
Yeah.
Poser.
I'm not a poser.
I was bawling.
Okay, all right. Calm down.
I was watching it in my car, and I almost drowned. The car filled up with tears.
Oh, my God. They definitely are going for an emotional reaction because they show clips from a lot of the earlier films.
It's primarily clips from earlier films.
Yeah, I mean, like Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. And we see a little bit more of the action. It starts out and Tony's talking to Pepper, I'm presuming. But we do get the shot of like a bunch of the Avengers in these like kind of like spacesuits.
Yeah.
And we don't only just see the ones that are on Earth, we see Tony and Nebula as well.
Yes.
So I think that's the biggest reveal from this particular trailer.
Nobody really thought Tony was going to die in space, did they?
No, I don't think people did, but I think that people were upset that they gave it away in the trailer.
The fact that they've given anything away is amazing.
Yeah.
What do you make of... I mean, if you are a dad and you're a Hawkeye You're going to teach your kids to shoot an arrow, right?
Probably.
So I shouldn't be thinking that that's Kate Bishop, the younger girl that we see him teaching to shoot arrows.
Unless Kate Bishop is his daughter.
Where's the Young Avengers movie? Maybe it felt cheesy to do Young Avengers. Comics have no shame. They'll just do whatever.
Right.
But in movies like Young Avengers, really?
Yeah.
Like Avengers babies?
Right.
But at this point, we've got Cassie Lang exists in this universe.
Yeah.
We know that a lot of people think that Catherine Langford is going to be Kate Bishop because 13 Reasons Why girl is in this movie, and we still have no clue who she's supposed to be.
Right.
And then also Ty Flip-Flop, the kid who played the kid in Iron Man 3.
Yes.
Which is 2011. Anyway, that movie's old now, too.
Yeah.
That kid is tall. He's like a young man.
Yeah.
And he's supposedly in this film as well. And people think that he might be Iron Lad. So we're like halfway to a Young Avengers at this point.
Yeah, we are. I don't know if they're going to be helping out.
Vision is gone.
Yes.
And maybe and the whole thing is like, people who died before the snap won't come back. And so Vision.
Right.
But if you took part of his core or that little piece that Shuri saved, stick it in a thing, you've got Young Vision, right?
Sure. I could see that.
So all we're missing is Patriot and, well, it depends on what lineup you're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's totally doable.
No
No
enthusiasm from you.
I haven't really read that much Young Avengers, so I don't really have that much enthusiasm.
Gasp.
But
okay.
How about you? I mean, are you excited about that idea?
I just gave it to you.
Yeah, well, I know you did.
I just said it.
I know you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am. What else did you like or not like about the trailer?
We got to see a little bit more of Captain Marvel, but I kind of would have liked to have seen her actually do something.
They actually shot that scene before they shot, I think, the entirety of the Captain Marvel movie.
Okay.
So they don't want to reveal too much.
Right.
And also, they may or may not have had a real good idea about
what the Captain Marvel movie was going to look like. Well, it just seems so like...
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. It's like, she's in it, guys. Look.
Yeah. Here's a good one. I like this one. I wish she'd smile more. They probably should have said that, right?
No.
Yeah, it's affecting. It's emotional. I liked Rocket hanging off of War Machine. I also like it looks like that they've given Rocket his comics costume, like with the scarf and everything. And, and the button-up plastron or whatever you call it.
Sure.
So that looks cool. I think people are speculating that I think more than a while is going to take place after the snap before things get changed or affected.
Yeah.
And we see about 14 different hairstyles on Widow over the course of it.
Yeah, we do.
But we see that her hair is growing out. It's two-toned, her roots are red and the ends are blonde. And I don't know how long a lady's hair takes to grow, but it seems like that's about a year or two.
Yeah.
So time is passing and
I know.
It's going to be a long movie.
It's going to be a very long movie, but I'm looking forward to it, and this trailer made me look forward to it even more.
Yeah, I've heard some semi-spoilery things, so maybe this is a la for a couple minutes if you don't want to hear this, but somebody was in a Disney shareholders meeting where they showed a scene, and it was basically the scene where Carol meets the Avengers, and they're like, well, where were you when all this is going on? She's like, well, Earth's got an Avengers. A lot of other planets don't have an Avengers, so I've been off doing that kind of stuff. And they find out that Nebula can detect the energy of the Tesseract or of whatever, and so they find out what planet Thanos has been on, and so that's when they saddle up and go to confront him.
Okay.
But that doesn't. I'm assuming that's early on. That's first.
Yeah.
First, second act.
Right.
So, as far as whether that involves the time travel or how that works, I don't know. We can speculate on what the storyline of the film is.
I know. I kind of wonder, if they're going to go visit Thanos and he's going to be like, "What? Leave me alone." And
well, he'll definitely be like that.
And he won't want to fight, and so then they won't have a choice. They'll have to go find another route.
Well, yeah, and even if they fight him, I think it'll be that the gauntlet is broke.
Yes.
So there's
You're
nothing, he
probably
couldn't
right.
undo it if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they did this thing in the comics in Hickman's run where the Avengers were trying to use the Infinity Gems to stop Earths from colliding. Are you ready to go? And they did it, but they did it wrong, and all the gems like blew up except for the time gem, which disappeared.
Okay.
And it showed up later and took Cap on this ride like through future sort of versions of the Avengers. So I'm thinking like maybe the time stone will be still intact, or they'll get that or something, and they'll be able
Right.
to use its energies to make their little time travel watches or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm guessing.
All right. That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you.
The distant future, the year 2000.
You got your love.
Yes.
You got your death.
Yep.
You got your robots.
Yes.
Two things robots famously can't do.
Love, death,
Love
and
and die.
robots. Yeah, I know.
Let's talk about Love, Death, and Robots, a new sci-fi anthology show on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It, I should say, is produced by David Fincher
Oh, I guess that makes sense. It's kind of dark and gritty.
and Tim Miller.
We've heard about this before. I
Yes.
just didn't realize that's what this was.
Yes.
Okay.
And before it was what we were talking about before, it was something else. They have wanted to collaborate on a reboot of Heavy Metal for a long time. Heavy Metal,
Okay.
of course, the anthology sci-fi fantasy comic.
Right.
With adult material for a long time. And it kind of evolved into Love, Death, and Robots.
Okay.
And there are many contributors to this. Names like John Scalzi, Alastair Reynolds, Ken Liu, Marco Clues, a lot of, Claudine Griggs, sci-fi
authors. Yeah.
Whose works, and I had to dig for this, I don't think it's on the tin, but whose works were mainly adapted by a guy named Philip Galat.
Okay.
He's a writer / director. Europa Report's probably the most famous thing that he has done, or at least the most lauded thing that he has done.
Sure.
What do you think of Love, Death, and Robots?
Well, I only saw the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I watched the first 2 as well.
And I thought it was interesting. It is definitely an anthology series because they're very different from each other. And the first one was like really dark and gritty, and was about like this trainer who like connects with. I don't know if it's necessarily a robot or it's like a robot monster.
It's R-rated Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. It's like pit fights in
It's Pokemon.
in a dirty, grim, dark cyber future.
But you have like some mental connection with,
Right. You
with
have
your
these
creature.
beastie monsters called beastie fights or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're sort of mentally, connected to them or whatever. And so, yeah, it's about like a woman who controls this giant monster and her team, and
And this wealthy guy comes up to her before the fight and says he wants her to throw the fight, and she says no way.
Right.
They all are like, go screw yourself, and they more or less say that to him.
Right.
And then we go to the fight, and
we don't have to tell the whole thing.
Oh,
If people
okay.
wanna
all right,
watch it.
Yeah, watch it. But then like after the fight,
Okay, so you're
Well,
you're
I don't
unstoppable.
well, I just
Mika's edge.
I guess I was really
She just
kind
has
of
to tell the whole thing.
Well, maybe I don't have to tell the whole thing.
Don't
Maybe
tell the whole thing.
I won't. There's kind of a twist towards the end of the episode, which I was not expecting or anticipating.
Don't tell the twist.
I won't.
That's the first one, and the second one is called 3 Robots.
And it's more or
creative
less
title.
about 3 robots.
And it is following 3 different robots as they sort of tour this city, which we come to find out is, it's post-apocalyptic, quote unquote.
Right.
And they are just looking at trying to determine the sort of vagaries and foibles of
Being
extinct
human.
humanity and what's going on with it.
Yeah.
You know what? we do have to talk spoilers, I think, in order to talk about these both completely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we will. So spoiler flag is on at this point for the rest of this segment about love, death, and robots.
Okay.
Not a lot of love. A lot of death.
Yes.
Some robots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I ask you what you thought? Did you tell me what you thought? Because I think, yeah. What'd you think?
I thought it was interesting. I mean,
You said that before.
They're definitely very different stories. Yeah,
Let me get us started off.
Okay.
I hated it.
Really?
I think they're garbage.
Oh, okay.
I think that they're fairly well animated. That was probably the coolest thing about the Sunny's Edge one, like the look for the most part.
Yes.
I think they are macho bullshit. I think they are terribly written. And let's just start off. Lead with this one because it's got boobs in it and it's got blood in it, right?
Yeah.
That's why they picked it. But it's like right away you have turned me off. You have a man-hating lesbian character who was brutally raped, and that is her motivation for fighting and winning.
Yes.
It's every single... Nice work, Philip Gillette. You hit every cliche on the bingo board as far as like,
That's
ooh, this is
true.
gritty. Oh, this is up there. And don't get me wrong, like, if you go back to heavy metal, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. There's some good stuff in heavy metal. There's some Mobius stuff or something. But a lot of it is like, this lady's cyber boobs are looking for its target. And and that's exactly what we've got going on here in this first one. It's just, who cares? Like, also, I guess the twist, like, none of it
Did you?
surprised me.
Okay.
It's very predictable. And then you get to 3 robots, and it's like... Wow, let's just do 11 minutes of, like, not funny jokes about humanity, and they're all just these archetypes. One of them's like, I've got an urban voice. It's like, that's great.
Right,
Let's make that one play
right.
basketball.
Right.
And I don't think that you even, like, got that might be a thing or a problem.
And
then
got
the twist
that.
is, not you, I just mean, like, the
Oh,
writer.
okay, I see.
And then the twist is that, cats talk.
And they took
and they're
over.
voiced by Chris Parnell.
Yes.
And what does that have to do with anything? That's not even really all that funny.
No. Somehow they helped.
It's just it's garbage. It's garbage. There's 18 of these things. There's no way I'm watching all of them. Forget it.
Yeah.
I will look at. Screen Rant will have a top 5 best ones, and so maybe I don't know. We'll have an update for me later when I see the good ones. But like. The John Scalzi one was the 3 robots. And it's garbage. It's just not. It's not funny.
It's okay.
Okay, well, you're being diplomatic.
I guess it's. I mean, it's not like the best thing I've seen ever. And I kind of liked the triangular robot that was like the woman's voice,
Right?
and
Because
like,
she got all the punchlines. They gave her all the punchlines.
Yeah.
Such as they were.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. The one kind of urban robot, they were talking about whether he was like an ancestor of Xbox. It was just kind of like, okay.
But it was an Xbot. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't a brand Xbox.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. And then like the cat thing was like, so did the cats kill the humans? Did the cats like
Who
take
knows?
over?
Who cares?
Yeah.
I doubt they thought it through.
Yeah. It was just
I guess we could
another.
ask John Scalzi.
It was just another like punchline at the end.
Scalzi.
Yeah.
Although I could see him writing something like this. I don't know if it's a short story or something like that, but yeah, I just was very disappointed. It's like the worst. Like when we saw Electric Dreams. Just to say, I'm glad that Sci-Fi Anthology is coming back. I mean, we've got the Twilight Zone, for crap's sake, in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Which we'll have a review of. So I'm glad that it exists, and I guess I'm glad that it's got a low 70s reception on Rotten Tomatoes. So not great, but not bad. But it's so juvenile. And we said this like 6 months ago when this was announced, that this is just going to be, it's so dark, it's so grim dark. What if the president has sex with a pig? It's just going to be the animated version of the worst Black Mirror episodes that you can think of.
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly what we got.
Yeah. You're right. And I mean, the first one definitely goes for, just like what do guys want to see in animation? Like, I mean, it is a little
They want to see somebody with
pandering.
Wolverine claws.
Yeah, I guess.
That's kind of a ripoff.
Yeah. So, anyways.
I was very unimpressed.
Yeah. It was not great.
Will you keep watching it?
Maybe like you.
Think of all the boobs there are for you to see with blood on them.
Maybe like you, I will watch the best ones, and then just take it from there.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the Ken Liu one.
Okay.
Or the Marco Clues one as well. And then there's a couple different animation studios that have made all these.
Okay, sure.
And Sony did the Marco Clues one, so I don't know. I'll probably watch that. But
Okay, sure.
this is the next thing that I'm going to have to hear everybody talk about for the next 6 months,
Right?
Until it is so ephemeral, everybody will forget it.
Yeah. Right.
But it, like Altered Carbon, it's like, Altered Carbon's so great. It's like it's really not.
No.
I read all the books and they weren't great. But
they were better than the show.
Yeah, I mean, if you could capture the sort of pulpy likeness of the books, but you know, it's just a guy playing Edgar Allan Poe or something.
Yep.
It's just dumb.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a from you and a no from me. But if you want to know more, it's out there on Netflix, available now. Love, Death, and Robots. Remember to do this in November. Why are we doing this in March?
Oh.
Remember that St. Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland.
Right. Exactly.
We're doing this on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, that's something else, because we really only see England, London in this thing.
That's true.
But what's Ireland like? Are they just keep that shit away from us?
Yeah,
I wonder how
probably.
Ireland's doing. Do
Yeah.
they mention them at all? I can't even remember.
I think they do.
Yeah. But I mean, just their long history of
Of terrorists
being part of
and...
the UK or not part of the UK and
Right.
in British rule and all that, and I just imagine if something like this happened, they'd just be like, I mean, we're kind of racist too, but keep that shit away from us.
Right.
I'm just gonna do our own thing.
Right.
We're talking about V for Vendetta, of course, the
Yes.
trade anthology ongoing story series thing.
Yes.
By David Lloyd and Alan Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Artist and writer, respectively.
Yes.
It originally appeared in Warrior, which, if you know anything about comics or you read some of these old comics, you know that Warrior was a anthology magazine itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's published by Des Skin, who's often known as the British Stan Lee.
Okay.
Did a lot for British comics.
Okay.
And it featured things like Miracle Man, which was Marvel Man, of course, at that time. And Johnny Pressbutton or whatever his name is, and there's probably some Dread in there,
Sure.
or 2000 AD. And this is where this originally appeared. It was sort of in 8-page sort of sections of this anthology book.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, the least popular. Nobody liked it when
Oh,
it was
really?
first coming out. Yeah. Now it came out over a long period of time because Warrior was only published from 82 to 85. And so when Warrior folded in 85, I think by this time there was a lot of affection for it.
Okay,
and it was
sure.
shopped around, and eventually they landed it at DC for their new, burgeoning Vertigo imprint.
Sure.
And so it finished its time at DC. And of course it's been endlessly reprinted since then and never gone out of print.
Right.
What happens in V for Vendetta?
Well,
A lot.
a lot. Yeah. There's this character named Just V. He's kind of the titular character, the main character of the book.
It's his vendetta.
Yes. And he wears a Guy Fawkes mask, a cape, and a hat. And that's pretty much it. You never see his face.
Right.
And
He's got Hugo Weaving's voice.
does he?
No, I don't know.
This happens very early on. There's this character called Evie Hammond, and she's this young girl. She's 16, very naive, and she's going out to try to get somebody to sleep with her because she needs money. And she asks somebody who's like an undercover cop, and he's like, oh, you're in big trouble now. But like, they like are like not just going to arrest her, they're like going to rape her. Or
Oh, it's a
something
Love,
like
Death,
that.
and Robots story.
Yeah, I know. So V actually somehow sees this, and he intervenes and kills some of the guys and beats the other guys up, and he takes Evie back to his house.
First 4 pages down.
Yeah, I know. But she doesn't really know where his house is. Like, he blindfolds her or something like that.
Right.
And she ends up staying with him for a long time.
Right.
And there are all these crimes that are going on in London, and they realize that V is the one who is committing these crimes, and they're trying to figure out like who this mystery man is and what his deal is.
Right. They, in this case, is Norse fire, and I learned a new word reading up on this.
Yeah.
The Christofascistic empire that has taken over Britain in the wake of World War III.
Right.
Which was, it's not really gone into in detail, but there's a spot of bother, in the East, and that led to America and Russia fighting it out. Britain, however, and we'll talk about this in a second, but Britain stayed out of it, and therefore was not, irradiated, and so it is livable. But of course, everything is depressed. There's a lack of food and shortages and things like that, and so this fascistic government has risen to power on a platform of "stop me if you've heard this one." Foreigners are bad.
Right.
Homosexuals are bad.
Right.
So. What a time to
Yes.
read this.
And
but anyway.
I know.
And so
then,
V is fighting against that.
And then the leader of this group is simply called the leader.
Yes.
And then they have other areas that are called the mouth,
The finger,
the
eye,
eyes,
the nose.
the finger, the
Yeah.
nose, yes. And like they've got various government people working in these factions.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little background on it. Remember, this was early 80s, pre-Thatcher England. Mm-hmm. And specifically in some of the afterwards or whatever, like Moore talks about how this was for them just a boogeyman story, basically.
Sure.
He was convinced at that time that Labour was going to win, in the elections of '82, sweep all this conservative nonsense out. We were going to denuclearize, and it was going to be a period of reform for Britain. Clearly, that did not happen.
No.
The exact opposite happened.
Yep.
Thatcher and her government were in power, and we basically got, just the same thing that was happening in America as well. Just, marginalizing of homosexuals, trickle-down economics.
Yep.
We got the 80s.
Yeah.
And Britain had a chance to not have the 80s in the 80s, and they had the 80s in the 80s.
Yes.
And so it looked a lot more real and plausible and scary than Moore had even intended at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I think is significant about V as a character is that, remember, he's not fighting for democracy. He's not fighting for the opposite. He's not like a labor guy or something
Right.
like that. He's specifically fighting for anarchy.
Right.
Which is, he talks and he makes the distinction in the book as well that anarchy is, lawlessness and chaos, which is what we need to get the government to the state of anarchy, which is self-rule, basically, where people are allowed to do whatever they want.
Right.
Not in a harmful way, but
Right.
just, you can express and do whatever you want, and nothing is verboten.
Right.
Which is the complete opposite of this Christo-fascistic
Yes.
government that currently is in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Norse fire. That's just chilling.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you told me tomorrow that like Ben Shapiro is telling everybody they should check out this great new Norse fire thing, I would absolutely believe you.
Right.
It was real.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah. It is a dark, scary tale.
Yeah. How would you describe V? Because we, as you said, famously do not know anything about him, and I think we can nominally call him, although there is some doubt there.
Yeah.
And of course, by the end of the book, V is not a him anymore.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're spoiling everything, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
Well, I think we know by the end of the book that he was in a government concentration camp.
Right.
And there were experiments done on him.
Yeah.
Which is maybe partially why he is the way he is. And he was in room 5. Room number 5, Roman numerals, is V.
Right.
And
but Moore didn't do a bunch of 5 puns for every title.
No.
every
title
every chapter starts with V. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I
that's
know.
just another little connection that he made.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we're talking about V here.
Yes. I think he can be very sensitive and caring. Like while he's in the concentration camp, start a garden.
Yeah.
And
to get his hands on fertilizer.
Yeah,
so he could blow it up.
I know. But he in his home, the shadow gallery they call it, he does have a rose garden. Now they kind of end up symbolizing death, so it's not really something sweet and innocent.
Right.
Because he leaves a couple with some of his victims.
Right. And his victims are, we come to learn over the course of the story, as does Inspector Finch, who's probably like our one good-ish guy in the organization
it's really
here.
hard to tell.
Yeah, but he is a head investigator for the Nose, which is like the cops, basically, just like the police.
Right.
And so he's tasked with finding this maniac who is killing people and blowing up. He blows up the Houses of Parliament. He blows up the Old Bailey. He blows up all these like landmarks of
He blows
British.
up Big Ben at one point.
Yeah, right. And so he's tasked with finding this guy, and he starts to realize that the people that he's killing aren't random. I mean, they are importantly placed in the government, but they're all people who worked at this concentration camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, I ask because I've tried to figure it out myself. I mean, I guess you just get a general idea of who he is. He's not somebody named in the story. It's not like that. But if he's in this concentration camp, he must be a marginalized person.
Right.
And when V dies, Evie sort of fantasizes about taking his mask off, which she doesn't do ultimately, and she sees, a couple different people or possibilities.
Yeah.
And she sees that maybe he's a black British person, so it could be that. She fantasizes that he's her father,
right?
Which would mean that her father was a socialist and kind of a political dissident, which is why he got taken away. And so, what is it? I mean, we can be relatively certain that he is a man, like we said before. But what do you think he is? Was he homosexual? Is he a gypsy or something like that?
I don't know. That's a good question.
We absolutely don't need to know, and that's kind of part of the point. But I think it's fun to speculate.
I don't know if he was a homosexual. I mean, we do have another character whose name starts with a V who is a homosexual in this book. Valerie.
You don't have to be coy. We can talk about it.
And we find out later from V that she was actually prisoner number 4.
Yeah.
In the concentration camp, and she died when she was there. I don't know. It's a good, kind of an interesting question to wonder, is he homosexual or is he another?
I mean, it's a real forest for trees situation.
It is because, like you said, he most likely was marginalized in one way or another, and I wonder, what was his sanity before he was in this concentration camp? Was he pretty sane before? And
do you think that he is insane? He's insane in the way, I'll just answer my own question, that like the Joker. Do you know what I mean? Because he's basically like a Joker type figure. He's got a plan for everything. He's erudite. He's clearly a genius level intellect, but of course he's using it to kill and blow up things. And so apparently Moore based him on an idea that he had for a hero earlier that never got published,
Okay.
which was a terrorist type figure like V that was fighting against a totalitarian state.
Yeah, I think I read about that.
And that character was a transsexual.
Okay.
So I'm just thought like that could
Right.
be maybe the unspoken sort of origin of V, but of course
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
Well, and then we don't really get any major clues throughout the story.
No, not really.
No.
No, and Evie is kind of ridiculed for her interest in it as well. So
Yeah.
As
which is
Lloyd and-
like, I guess it's like I understand like,
But it's like he
Fee
tells
just wants to
Finch
be mysterious
when they fight, it's I'm an idea. Ideas are bulletproof. You can't you
Oh,
can't
that's
kill
true.
shoot and kill me.
right.
As they were developing this, Lloyd and Moore, Skin also worked with him as well, and he suggested some things that they should draw from for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And he said Orwell, Huxley, Thomas Dish, Judge Dredd, Harlan Ellison's Repent Harlequins, and the TikTok Man. There's a lot of that in this. Catman and the Prowler in the City at the Edge of the World, Vincent Price's Dr. Phibes and Theater of Blood, David Bowie, The Shadow, Night Raven. That's an earlier character by David Lloyd. Batman, Fahrenheit 451, Writings of the New World School of Science Fiction, Max Ernst's painting Europe After the Rain, Thomas Pynchon, The Atmosphere of British Second World War Films, The Prisoner, Robin Hood, and Dick Turpin.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That this list of influences,
It's like,
and you can see
huh.
that.
yeah, that's all there.
Yeah.
Or
I mean-
is it that this is just another anti-hero fiction in the
Well-
tradition that all of the, like if you're going to say, all right, Harlan Ellison, what's Repent Harlequin going to be about? Orwell, Huxley, and Thomas Tish.
Right.
This is
Are
just
they
the
going to
same
say
thing.
the same length,
Yeah.
same list? Well, I mean, Judge Dredd, like in the comics, he never takes his helmet off.
That's right.
So that kind of reminds me of that. Fahrenheit 451. At one point, Evie mentions that he had read it to her. It almost sounds like it was like a bedtime story or something like that, which is
Right.
kind of weird.
That also features a talking about the story here, not the amazing Michael B. Jordan HBO show.
Yeah.
That also features a somewhat fascistic world, but there's a loss of knowledge. There's a brain drain going on in this world. People are forgetting about literature. They're forgetting about all these things
Sure.
that V prizes.
Yes, he has a lot of books and movies and music.
And the people
at his
who
home.
live in the Britain of V for Vendetta watch these horrible. Actually, honestly, if you just watched TV in 1983 in
Yeah.
Britain, it'd probably be the same thing. But it's like these horrible, empty
Dramas.
sitcoms and and sci-fi dramas,
Mm-hmm.
and like these are my knockers. Huh? No, my door
Yeah,
knockers.
right.
It's like, jeez, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, minister, it ain't.
right.
So yeah, that's the sort of contrast. It's a culture war as well.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And Evie's dumb.
She's
not-
very naive.
She's just uneducated.
Yeah.
She's grown up in this world and without the benefit of
She
all
doesn't
that
know any
education.
better.
So
Yeah.
he has to explain words to her things that are above a few syllables.
Yeah.
Oh wow, another Alan Moore fantasy where a man tells a woman what to do.
I know. I know. And then later in the book, I mean, we can do spoilers here, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I said V dies.
Yeah. All right. So later in the book, Evie, we think, is arrested and tortured repeatedly, and there's a rat in her cell, and first she's really bothered by it, and then she's not, but she gets this letter from Valerie, and that's the one kind of saving grace that kind of helps her through it. And they want to know more about her relationship with this V character, and she won't tell them. And we don't even know how long this has gone on. This has gone on for probably a couple of months. And they shave her head, and she feels like she was examined by a doctor or something like that. And then
She thinks it's a woman.
yes, and then
See?
yeah, I know.
I don't know. I've read this so much that we are talking about the important themes, but for me, I've read it so much that this is I'm down to this now. It's like if you've seen your favorite movie 25 times, and now you're like, I'm just going to look at all the shoes that people are wearing in this movie. I'm down to like the last thing that I have not figured out is who he is, and there isn't necessarily any way to know, but I'm still kind of obsessed with that. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So they basically have a statement that they had made up for her, and they're like, you need to sign this, otherwise we're going to take you out back behind the chemical shed and shoot you. And she's like, I'm not going to sign it. And she refuses. And they're like, okay, well, I guess that's it then. I guess you're free. And she's like, what? And she turns around, and like the door was left open, and she goes out, and there's like a soldier on like wheels. And then she goes into the room where she was interrogated, and like
there's a rat in a cage.
And then there's like a guy who there's like a speaker box like on his chest, but like he's another mannequin.
Right.
And then finally she gets to this one room, and V's in it, and he's like, welcome home. And she's like, what? You got punked. She's like, you...
Ashton Kutcher, your V?
Yeah, she's like, you tortured me this entire time? And she's so mad. And you can't blame her for being upset. I mean,
yeah,
anybody would be upset in that situation. And she's just so pissed at him. And it's like he more or less said that he had to have her go through that so she could like understand him more or something like that.
Yeah, it's a brutal emotional rape, basically.
It is.
And V is not a good guy.
No, he's not apologetic.
No, and Alan Moore has said, like, I wrote it that way. I didn't want to tell the audience what to think. I just wanted to tell them to think. So he does a lot of things to divorce you from the morality of V's actions. Like, V's not a hero, and he wouldn't call himself a hero.
No.
But it is horrible. But it serves to, it's kind of like if Captain America thought he was going to die and he kidnapped somebody and injected them with super soldier serum and then subjected them to a Vita Ray treatment. He basically restages his origin story in order to make another him.
This is true.
Which is... You want to talk about like ideology. You want to talk about like brainwashing and the kind of things that go on in a Christofascistic state.
Yes,
we got a little bit of that going on the other side.
Yeah, we do.
He radicalizes her basically.
Yeah, and then he's like, he takes her out up on the roof and like is like, feel the rain, blah 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 blah, and like
Andy Dufresne thought there was a rat in his cell.
Yes, and like it's almost as if like the night like when he escaped the concentration camp, he was like
Dufresne.
And like he was like naked and it was raining, and then
when was the Shawshank Redemption written?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
That was late 70s, right?
Okay.
I think he's got them beat on that. But
okay.
Sorry, you go ahead.
So it's like she's experiencing being naked in the rain too, and like she kind of like calms down after that and is like
82 Rita Hayworth's Hair or whatever the novella was called. Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption. 82. Wow. Photo finish.
Yeah, I gotta say you're right about that.
Yeah. It's probably the best. It's probably the most well-known sort of sequence from the book. Mm-hmm. Recreated stunningly in the Wachowski brothers produced V for Vendetta film from 2005.
Which we did not watch.
Which I will never watch.
Yeah.
When should I tell my story about that?
You can tell it now if you
want. I'm going to tell it now.
Okay.
So everybody was on board with the Wachowskis at this point still, right?
Yes.
And so they, with the best intent, created this film adaptation, which just could not exist, doesn't need to exist, should have never been made, but here we are.
Yeah.
And they made it, went to the film. I think I was out in the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
Because in the first 5 minutes, there is a scene that it's much like, it all starts the same, basically.
Sure.
So Queen Amidala is Evie.
Right.
And she's watching the TV, while she's putting her horror makeup on or whatever.
Right.
And immediately the TV's like, saying something, Christofascistic, like, oh, you puppets or whatever. And she's like, that's enough of that, thank you. And it's like, oh, they made her like tough and like self-aware. Immediately you've ruined that character.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole book is her journey to self-awareness. So you've
Right.
already wrecked that. And then when she goes out and she gets grabbed by the fingermen and V comes in and kills them all. And in doing so, he gives this long-ass, stupid monologue where every word starts with a V, that everybody who likes this movie loves that monologue. But he's like, verily, the veritas of vineyards and vaccines.
Wow.
Whatever. And it's just like, and at that point I was like, I'm good. Tell you what, I was there with my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, I'm going to turn the volume down on my PSP. Yes, it was a Sony PSP. What was going on then? And I'm just going to play some video games, and you just tell me if you want to go at any point. She was really mad because she wanted to watch a movie. When it reached in my pocket, no PSP.
No.
I was like, wait a minute, what? So I just got up and left the theater and went to the car. It was parked outside. I combed through the car, couldn't find the PSP. This is the theater and my job were fairly close to each other in the same city. So I just got in the car and just drove to work, at like 9 p.m. and went in and searched my desk, searched all over for the PSP. All this time my girlfriend's watching this horrible, horrible movie. Couldn't find it. Eventually realized I think that the cleaning people just probably took it.
Really?
I don't want to blame anybody for anything, but I left it on my desk, and then they were just like, oh, okay, take that. Because I checked the lost and found later, and it wasn't there, and so on and so forth. And so, PSP gone. So, ruined one of my favorite graphic novels.
Yes.
Lost my PSP. Girlfriend's mad at me. It was like a very bad night in my young life.
Yeah. Yeah. Not great.
Let me tell you my League of Extraordinary Gentlemen story.
Boy.
No.
Yeah? Do you have one?
So anyway, if you ever watch this movie, let me know what you think. I'd be very interested in your opinion.
Okay. Well, if it's ever on TV and I don't have anything else to do, maybe.
Yeah, is it ever on TV?
I don't know.
It feels like one that FX would play this a lot or something. They probably did after it came out. What do you think about the, is this a word, intertextuality? That's probably not what we're looking for. What did you think about the varying storytelling techniques, I guess is what I wanted to say. Because at one point, the story switches to singing what's going on.
Yeah.
It's
I
very
thought it was,
Threepenny.
yeah.
Very Threepenny.
I thought it was interesting. I think that particular part of the story, well, I think book 2 is called Vicious Cabaret.
The Vicious Cabaret.
So I thought that was interesting that we have the music part. I can't really read music, so it's not like I could hear it in my head.
Oh, yeah.
But
I haven't sat down and played it or anything. I'm sure you can find a YouTube video or something.
I'm sure. But it kind of rhymed. There were a lot of V words in it.
Yeah, well.
I know. But I thought it was a clever way to move the story forward.
It's like, I could barely hear that praise for its faintness.
Oh, well.
Not interested. All right, that was the question I asked.
I thought it was interesting. Maybe he's a little Phantom of the Opera, with his storytelling.
Yeah, Phantom of the Opera didn't have good intentions. You know what I mean? He just wanted this chick that he was spying on in a dressing room. It's kind of gross when you think about it.
It is. It's really kind of awful when you think about it.
Yeah, angel indeed.
Yeah.
I love that. That's one of the things I love about Moore's works. Speaking of Threepenny, I think it's which book is it? One of the books of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic, the movie.
Yes.
Is just basically Threepenny
musical?
Opera.
Okay.
Jenny Diver is like one of the characters, is like one of the main characters. He takes all these characters, from literature and stuff like that. And so that one's, I'm assuming, no copyright on that one, right?
Right.
So yeah, Pirate Jenny becomes like the daughter of Nemo, Captain Nemo.
Okay, sure.
And then later on becomes Captain Nemo herself. And it does involve her being brutally raped. So I guess, I'm sorry, Love, Death, and Robots.
Yep.
You were just following the master.
Yeah.
It's a complicated relationship between Alan Moore and rape in his fiction.
Yeah.
But nobody gets raped in this.
No.
There's also another, just to go off the whole German thing, there's a preponderance of scenes that are set in this cabaret-esque club.
Yes.
You know, there's shades of a Christopher Isherwood type thing going on.
Yeah.
Where they kind of go in and out of this club, and we see the character that probably gets the worst in the entire book, but the wife of Almond, who's like one of the Gestapo men, basically, who's killed by V without a thought. And good riddance. Like, he's a horribly abusive, like, terrible person.
Yeah.
And V just offs him, but then we see the effect on his wife. Like, his wife loses her government pension because of that. She has no support. Then she kind of sidles up to this other guy who's a horrible person, but she just needs somebody to, like, support her because you can't make any money in this horrible world.
Yeah.
That guy is killed by V. And so now she's down to just basically being a burlesque girl and doing who knows what, you know, off stage.
Yes.
And she decides to buy a gun.
Yeah.
Which is always a good start.
Yep.
And ends up actually, like, killing, like, Susan, like, the leader.
Yeah.
Which is something that, like, V could not have even planned that.
No.
But we start to see the kind of effects of the chaos of the land of, you know, shoot somebody in the face.
Right.
Or whatever the enchanted woodland we're in at this point before we get to Do As You Please.
Right.
So he couldn't have even planned that. In fact, you think he's already the whole the whole society runs off of this computer called Fate, which is like a supercomputer, which that and like V's superpowers, which are just being like the fastest, best fighter, I guess,
right,
are the only real like science fiction-y elements here.
Yeah.
But he's hacked somehow. He's created his own supercomputer and has hacked Fate and is using that to drive Susan insane. And you have to think at some point he's going to try to kill him or do something.
Yes.
But he just gets shot in the face by what's-her-name.
Yes.
So it worked out great.
Right.
That's like, this is probably an effect of it going from being like a weekly series or a monthly series in Warrior to being published specifically by Vertigo, is that I feel like the third act is weak.
Oh,
I feel like it falls off.
The
longer it goes on, the more kind of disjointed it gets.
Well,
because we start to get like, you know, we get the one lady who's the wife of the one guy or whatever. She's sort of like trying to move up. You know, she's trying to like, we're going to take over this
right.
thing. So she's
the
manipulating.
Was she the wife of Conrad, or she's dating Conrad or something?
And so she's not a real strong character. She's just kind of there for no good reason. And yeah, and like I like when Finch goes to the camp and he takes LSD. It's lysergic.
Yeah.
And he's like, is this enough? Takes like a whole bottle. And it's like, whoa, boy.
I know, right?
And so he has this, you know, he trips balls and sort of imagines like this whole thing that happened. He also is kind of in his own way recreating V's origin story and becoming a V himself.
Right.
You know? There's a lot of Vita rays going around.
Right.
And so he has this experience. Like, I liked that part too, but then he just kind of walks away at the end. That's like the last image. He's just walking away. Walking away. Like, what?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do think that the third book is the weakest. I mean, in the first book, we see V taking revenge on all of the people in the camp. And so that's like a big part of his plan. The second one, it's largely Evie Hammond being tortured, we find out later, by V.
Yeah.
And then the third one is just kind of like wrapping up all the loose ends. So it's just, it's not as strong.
Yeah. Stories have that problem sometimes.
Yeah, they do. You know, where do you go when your female lead has been tortured and all this stuff?
It's kind of the emotional climax. I mean,
yeah.
Where do you go after that?
Yeah. And I mean, she ends up staying with V. So is it out of necessity? Has she forgiven him? Is it kind of what do you call it when you like
Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah, thank you. Stockholm syndrome. Like
maybe, but I think that of all the falsehoods and deception, I think help to emphasize the veracity and virtue
I see
of
what
the
you did there.
vicissitudes of Valerie's letter. Like, she realizes, all right, this was all fake and manufactured, but this really does happen to people. Before this, I was just a kid, and I was just trying to survive, and I just like kind of live and let live.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that this, beautiful, wonderful person was just ground down and destroyed by this thing. And so
Right.
if that's if these are the butterflies being broken on the wheel, and V and people like V and now me, Evie, survived that crushing, then it's up to us to stop this machine from going.
Right.
And so I think that she hangs around for that reason. But her principles don't change, because we don't know who V was before or what kind of person he was, but he has no compunctions like taking lives. Like, he will kill anybody in his way, and Evie won't kill anybody.
Right.
Although I'd have to imagine that if you blow up 10 Downing Street, somebody's going to die.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but her way is like, she refuses to do it that way. And I think that it's noble and telling for V that he accepts that. He isn't like, doesn't give her some speech about how, like, you think you can, Thomas Paine, you got to water the tree of liberty with blood. Like,
right.
He doesn't say anything like that. He's just like, okay, that's fine. That's the way we're going to go forward. Good.
Right.
Like, someday I'm a monster and I will be gone, and then hopefully, you won't need people like me. So
Right.
Negged her a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I don't know. Do you want to talk about the significance of Guy Fawkes? Do people know Guy Fawkes?
Yeah. So Guy Fawkes wasn't he? He was a real guy.
I think he's a hacker, right?
Stop it.
Yeah, he's a real guy. He was a
and-
papist, and he wanted to blow up the Houses of Parliament, because he didn't like the government, and he didn't like the Anglican, Puritan government at the time, and so he became this figure where they remember the 5th of November and the gunpowder plot.
Yes.
But he's also, thanks in most part to this, he's become this figure, of rebellion, even though it seems like he was kind of a screw up. But he's become this, figure that's like, is a message to the people in power to, watch it. Remember,
Right.
you work for us, that
Right.
kind of thing. And something like this, could happen. We could rebel.
Don't they like burn like
effigies? Yeah.
effigies to him? Yeah.
Yep. Now he's got a fedora and he's going after Scientology.
Great.
Which, all right.
fine. Yeah.
But, it's become commoditized. I think
Yeah.
that mask, sells thousands and thousands of copies
Yeah.
every year. He's become the Che Guevara kind of
Yes.
Che Guevara T-shirt of
Right.
rebellion. But
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
it's good to rebel still.
Yeah, I know.
guess.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to say that you haven't said?
Well, I mean, the mask is very distinctive. So, do we know? Did he really look like that? Did he have like facial hair like that?
Yeah, I think his name was Guido technically, and so I think that design of that mask was meant to ridicule aspects of him that are now not culturally relevant and I don't understand.
Okay.
But it does seem like he was like a cavalier, with the mustache and all that, and so he was supposed
Kinda
to
like
look
a
a
Three
certain
Musketeer
way.
or
It'd be
something.
like, Three Musketeer. Yeah, right. It'd be like, if you burned the Monopoly guy,
Yeah,
Uncle
okay.
Moneybags or whatever,
Yeah.
He's got a top hat, he's got a monocle, all
Right.
these things. A tech billionaire now doesn't look like that. He's got
Right.
a MAGA haircut, and like and a
Right.
turtleneck or whatever. But we still get that it's like, oh, it's old timey rich,
Mr. Moneybags.
yeah, the Teapot Dome
Right.
scandal. Yeah.
Right.
So it has some semiotic significance. I don't get it because I didn't live in Puritan England.
Right. Okay. Right.
They should change. You want to update Guy
Guy
Fawkes?
Fawkes?
Should we update him?
Yeah, maybe we should.
Is he going to be going to have a hacker? Got Google Glass.
Oh my God.
He's got a neck beard,
Oh no.
right? Just the neck part.
Oh, it's awful.
Little jawline definition. Get that beard down there. He's wearing glasses for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember.
The 5th of November. Oh man.
Would you recommend this?
Yeah, absolutely I would. It had been on my to read list for a really long time, so I'm glad we got a chance to read it for the show.
Yeah, I would undoubtedly. It's a seminal work. it's just so much more important than ever to read this and to know about it. I mean, we didn't even, not a political show, but we didn't even talk about the eerie parallels of characters saying that they want to make Britain great again.
I was just going to say that.
And
that was written like how many years ago?
And
way before.
For a guy who was younger and had a lot fewer crappy Hollywood adaptations of his work, even more was optimistic that things were going to turn around. And instead we got the last half or the last quarter of the 20th century that we did. And we're still in it, feels like, going forward now. And so even for a guy who thought, oh, nobody's going to take this seriously, this is a lark.
Right.
Boy, like it's really important to read, what's possible, what we can do, if we become like this. So for that reason, I think it's so important to read. Yeah. Looks good on your shelf too. All those hacker babes go, oh, this guy's V for Vendetta.
Oh my gosh.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we finally got to read that. That was really great.
Yeah, me too.
And like I said, I would recommend it. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it by clicking through some of the links that we'll put in the show notes for this stuff. Yeah. When you make those purchases on Amazon with our links, a percentage of that comes back to us at no extra cost to you, keeps the lights on here, and keeps us in Guy Fawkes masks. And just swimming in them like Scrooge McDuck, who himself was designed by Karl Barks probably to look like a Monopoly guy, right?
Oh, sure.
To look like the image of wealth.
Yes.
I can't wait for the DuckTales redesign where Scrooge has got weird beard, Google Glass, he's got a turtleneck.
Oh
He's taking you to the forefront of the upfront.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, let's get into our talk with Jeremy Stomberg. I had a really great time talking to Jeremy, and I definitely want to have him for real on the Trek show at some point. But, yeah, we'll see about that. But, yeah, it was great talking to him about the Minnesota Roller Girls, about the history of roller derby, also his connection with First Wrestling and wrestling promotions, be they independent or major, and the fact that all of this is kind of like a sports entertainment kind of thing.
Sure.
And just the rise of that in that last quarter of the 20th century, but also its roots going back. Fascinating. It's not something that I think about a lot, but it's really interesting to hear him talk about that. And that's it. That'll just run off the end of this show. So we'll just wrap up where we're at now. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Just Enough Trope to look for more information and what we're posting and talking about. You can also find our show on many of the various podcatchers that you can get out there. Search for Just Enough Trope, and that's our show. Subscribe to the show when you see it. It's the best way to get it. It keeps you up to date, and also give us a review and a rating if you would, because that really does help us out, and we want to hear what you're thinking about, what we're doing. So to that end, give us 5 Guy Fawkes masks. Guy, say that 5 times fast.
It's a tongue twister.
Yes, to add to my swimming pool full of Guy Fawkes masks.
Yes.
They break sometimes.
They do.
I've severely lacerated myself, but it would just get it all wrapped up, go to the doctor, it's fine. So give us 5 stars so I don't have to cut myself anymore. Here's our interview with Jeremy, and that's it until we talk next time on our next show. I'm signing off. I'm your host, Caliban.
I'm your co-host, Mika Hanna.
Keep the geek fires burning.
Come on, baby, just fill me up. Come on, just give it up. Go on and take it all.
I know that you are an announcer for the Minnesota Roller Girls and for First Wrestling. Can you tell me about how you got involved with that?
Yes, I can.
Sure.
I used to go to this film festival down in Austin, Texas every year, and made some friends down there. And that's where the modern flat track roller derby started.
Okay.
And these friends said, "Oh yeah, you got to come down. You got to check this out. I think it's just right up your alley." And whenever I would visit, it would be kind of like a week on the wrong side of the month, just to miss it. And then when one started up here, I just we bought tickets at the old Robot Love store. Remember that? Yeah. And we showed up, and we were the first people in line up at Cheapskate in Coon Rapids.
Sure.
And there were people that were just like carrying boxes of gear, and they're like, not even all the skaters are here yet. So we went across the street to a Dairy Queen and had some food and some shakes, and came back, and we were still first in line.
Sure.
And we just kind of fell in love with it. We went, the whole first 2 years, and then one of their original announcers had to step away because he worked in Antarctica.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have this weird kind of, I think it's like 4 months on the ice, 6 months off, or something like that. It's not a direct like year schedule. Like you're not going there for 5 months and then 7 months off,
sure,
or something like that.
Is this like a research position?
I don't know what he does.
Is he a penguin wrangler?
I don't know. I only actually met him once. And stuttering Frank Kozlowski, but I don't know. He could be like a cook in The Thing, or I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Or he could be the head of Operation Paperclip or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay. All right. The said the better.
Yeah, but So we either made or we made friends with, or we already had known a number of the people that were on the league by then, and they, I guess, had announced at a league meeting that they were looking for a new announcer, and I got about 7 calls and texts within like a 5-minute period of friends saying, "Oh, you should try out for this." So
you've been nominated.
Yeah, so I tried out for it, and the first run through, I totally screwed the pooch, and I was like, I'm never going to do this. Is never going to work. And one of the skaters, Lydia Punch, had seen me do stuff at scooter rallies, just hosting. It's kind of like live. I've never been able to really shied away from a crowd. I've never had stage fright or anything like that.
Sure.
So she's like, "Oh no, he's I think he's just flustered. You should give him a chance. I've seen him. He does good stuff." And so they put me through the second one, and I ended up doing well enough for them to say, "Hey, let's do this." And I've been doing that for 13 years.
How does the audition for that sort of work? Like, are you doing like a rehearsal? Or
It
something
was
like
a
that, or
whole
practice.
Kind of. It was just at a practice. It was at a regular night's practice, and there were at the time, man, it was a lot of excitement about it back then. There were. I'd say there were probably about 16 people that were trying out for this.
Okay.
And they just kind of randomly put 2 people together.
Sure.
And
okay.
had us call 2 jams.
Okay.
And and then they just did some cuts, and then some people moved on to the second one, and then they did some cuts. And that last one we sat in with the other remaining announcer. Mm. And Scotty Cruz, and and we did a couple jams that way, and they huddled off and they made their decision. So.
Okay. And this whole time, people are just skating around.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it was really strange because it was the first time I'd done something in a room that big, and it's the Roy Wilkins Auditorium, the old St. Paul Auditorium, downtown St. Paul.
Sure.
Which is a big room. And the delay between the time that you say something on the mic and the time that it gets back to you will really mess with you the first time until you get into it. We ended up getting, later on got a monitor next to us so we could actually hear what we were saying as we were saying it.
That's
as
good.
Opposed to waiting.
That's good. Yeah.
So I did that for 13 years. Coming up on my last 2 events in March and April.
Okay.
I don't know when this is being
Well,
this is
I'm
going
not sure
out.
either,
So,
but yeah.
So you have a couple chances to see me, or you just miss me.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 13 years. Last year, my wife said that she had about 2 or 3 years left in her. She's a skater.
Oh, okay.
And I said, okay, well, then I have 1 year left in me, so I can just be a partisan fan for a couple seasons.
Sure, yeah. Well, I just remember being a fan of roller derby a long, long time ago, like in the to late 80s when the wrestling boom was starting. It lifted a lot of other sports entertainment boats. And so I remember seeing, I don't know what it was.
Roller Jam or
Roller Jam
Games.
or, yeah, something like that, and seeing it on TV. How has roller derby evolved since those kind of early days?
Well, it's real now.
Oh, it's real. It's
Yeah,
not just
it's not-
sports
yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, originally roller derby started in Chicago, and the whole idea was that it was a skating marathon across the United States. So like a 3,000-mile skating marathon, and it was teams. And some teams would skate for a while, and they'd pass it off to the next team, and whichever team skated 3,000 miles first. Yeah, it was crazy. It was in the old was it the old Cicero Stadium? No, I can't remember the name of the stadium, but downtown Chicago. It was huge.
Yeah.
And then it got to be more of there got to be some rules to it. People liked it. Leo Seltzer, the person who came up with it and bankrolled it for a lot of years, he noticed that people really, really dug it when people would hit each other.
Yeah.
So they came up with a rule set where you're getting points by making laps around folks and hitting people and doing crazy stuff. And eventually it was predetermined, like pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And you'd have teams that would basically ride around the country in buses, and you'd have a team from New York or a team from L.A., and then you'd have another team, and that team was the hometown team of wherever they were going.
Okay.
So there was a Minneapolis team or a Minnesota team. I can't remember the name of the team that played at the old Minneapolis Auditorium, which is now the Minneapolis Convention Center. But it was just, if they were in Chicago, they were the Chicago team. If they were in Sheboygan, they would be the Sheboygan team.
Okay, sure.
And just predetermined games like that, and it went kind of well into the 60s, and I think early 70s is when it pretty much died out entirely. And then around mid-late 80s, when all that kind of crazy stuff was coming out, like American Gladiators and WWE, WWF at the time was just huge. I think was it on TNT or TBS, one of those Turner stations, I think maybe, that did a roller games, roller jam, all these different things. Right. They wore rollerblades, which were the new hotness.
Yeah, right.
And there was there was a wall you skated up and down, and there was an alligator pit. There was literally an alligator pit, like a View to a Kill, jumping. James Bond. And that went for a while, and that eventually died off. And then in Austin, Texas, around about the turn of the century, some folks got together and created some derbs, and like any good volunteer organization, people didn't get along, and it split into two.
Okay, all right.
And those two organizations are still around today: the Texas Roller Girls and the Texas Lone Star Roller Girls. One is a bank track team, so like old school bank track, and one is a flat track league. And the flat track really took off because it is much easier to tape out an oval on a floor than get a $30,000 plywood and steel bank track. Sure. And not only have to purchase the track, but also have a place to set it up, have a place to store it if you don't have a permanent home. Yeah.
It's a lot bigger than a wrestling ring.
Yeah, it certainly is. And so there are, I'd say maybe 6 bank track leagues still operating in the country, I think.
Do they interact? Do the roller girls travel to their sort of territory?
Yeah. There's a LA that had the Battle on the Bank tournament every year. Texas had one. But when you're limited to that few number of teams, it can get stale. Yeah. So flat track is really the one that took off, and there are. Just in WFTA, the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, there are 400 or so leagues around the world, and then there are other smaller organizations as well, like USARS and MAID and kind of unaffiliated stuff. But Minnesota was one of the first, I think the first 10, and learned directly from the original leagues down in Texas.
Sure. There's a lot of money behind like soccer now in America. Do you ever see somebody just trying to back like a national sort of organized promotion for roller derby?
There have been a couple folks that have tried, but I think it's not necessarily a problem because it's part of the inherent DIY-ness of it all.
Yeah.
Is the fact that there's no real owner of it.
Sure.
You know, there are a bunch of different organizations. Some are 501c3s, some are LLCs, some are just a bunch of people that get together and skate and don't have insurance, you know.
Yeah, right.
And there's not, I think, a problem. And this is just, you know, I don't want to tell, you know, skaters how to run their business, but I think that there's a main problem is there's a lot of people that just they can't agree on anything. I mean, they can't. There's a lot of folks that people have been saying, oh, well, you know, we're not a real sport until we're in the Olympics. So it's like, no, well, not really, because there's plenty of real sports that aren't in the Olympics,
and plenty that are, like ping pong.
Yeah, yeah, and and plus the whole IOC is extremely corrupt, and you don't want to get involved in that, and there's a good sized contingent that think, and I can totally see their point of view, that ceding any control of it to an outside group is kind of betraying the kind of indie ethos of it.
Yeah.
There have been folks that have tried to set stuff up, but no one has succeeded.
Yeah.
I think somebody could, if they wanted, you know, who's that dude that in the '60s wanted to set up High Ally as the new, you know, sport, and just
I remember that from Mad Men.
Yeah. Or there's a family, I can't remember their names, who are starting up a new wrestling promotion to compete with WWE, and they just have tons of money behind them. And if somebody could figure out a way to keep the skaters that have kept this thing going for the past nearly 20 years involved in the decision-making aspect of it, and not make any gross choices about sponsors or other things that you have to connect with. You have to have as part of a large group like that. They could, I don't know. I think it's possible. It'd be extremely difficult, and I think there needs to be another Whippet out there for people to get the excitement going again, because
we could do a sequel to Whippet. It's about time.
Yeah, or an entirely different movie that had derby as either as a focus or as just kind of a big part of it. Yeah, that was so great for just about every league. Yeah, just doubling, tripling attendance. In the post-Whippet world, we sold out Roy a couple times. Yeah, and we were very close to having the world record for number of spectators at a roller derby bout. But literally that same night, the Rat City Roller Girls in Seattle had moved into the Key Arena. The old Supersonics arena. Yeah, and they had been able to fit more people in there than we could fit into ours.
Yeah, what's Drew Barrymore up to? It'd be a shame to see it. I mean, go corporate. What does that even mean? But to see it lose its character, like you said, of sort of an outsider type thing. But it's just like ECW, as a wrestling promotion. Like they sort of set themselves up as not the main thing.
Right.
But then every business's goal is to become big enough to be bought by the main thing, I guess, in order to be successful. So,
or at least compete with them and put them out of business.
yeah,
That's
the dream.
And that's the main, in my opinion, the main problem with WWE is they don't have someone to compete with. Like, as gross as a lot of the stuff was in the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, the whole idea that there were two massive organizations that were, they had their competing shows on at exactly the same time, and they were trying to outdo each other and make people. People would leave during the commercial and check out
flip over
check out to the other channel,
on.
USA to TNT.
Yeah.
And they were trying to make sure that there was something going on that channel, on the other channel, that they wouldn't want to turn back.
Right.
And so when Vince McMahon bought WCW and brought it in as part of WWE, it was, I don't want to say the death knell, because it's still extremely popular and makes a lot of money, but for a lot of folks, it seemed it felt like they weren't trying anymore, trying as hard to entertain, and stories got stale, and the talent was not as, the characters weren't as exciting, and that's why I'm just a much bigger fan of indie wrestling, because it's anytime when you are trying your damnedest to just entertain every single night, because you know that you're trying to win people's hard-earned entertainment dollars. You have to give them your best show every night, and you don't have a go home show. You have to put on something that makes people want to buy tickets for your next event. Yeah. And I mean, like, not to toot our own horn with First Wrestling, but we sold out First Avenue, 2 nights in a row, in January, and then our show, we put tickets on sale for our March show with one person on the poster, and then we just every few days we were adding an additional person. And what was cool about this thing that we're doing next week, the 21st of March, whenever you're listening to this, is that it's the only people that we've advertised are women. Okay. And we're not saying this is a women's wrestling event. It's not just going to be women, but our idea was that we're gonna try and see what we can do, and if we put out a product that people love, people enjoy, it doesn't matter who is booked, and they know they're going to have a really good time. And the fact that we can give a lot of really high-end women wrestlers opportunity to be on a stage like that is pretty cool. And I don't know, it's like something we talk about all the time is how can the next show be even better? Yeah. Because we're trying, we do get people saying, "Oh man, that last show was the best you've ever done." It's like, "Oh crap! Now we have to do." No, it's like, "Oh, now we got to do better."
The dedication of wrestlers is just crazy to me. I mean, just like any business or show business, like you want to get big. We'd love to be The Rock, but the fact that people go out there, like house shows, blow me away. And the fact that like big promotions still do them. It's one thing to do the Swanton Bomb or something like that when you're going to be on primetime TV, but the fact that they just go and do it in God knows where, Idaho or something like that, and put their bodies on the line, and they just want to give that show. It's much different than a comedian who's like, I just want to go out there and just make some people laugh, get up in front of 12 people. But the people who go out and just put their bodies on the line, and it's amazing. Like it's so much. People call it fake, but there's nothing really fake about it. Right. Like they're entertainers.
It's a live action stunt show.
Exactly.
With a little soap opera element.
Yeah. Hopefully a good soap opera.
Oh, hopefully.
So when you're an announcer for wrestling, and you're doing play-by-play for Roller Girls, right? Yeah. But the wrestling thing is more just like, and in this
ring
corner.
Announcer,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, ring announcer. I do the intro videos.
Oh, okay.
That we put on the big screens beforehand. But yeah, no, that was because wrestling years ago there was a wrestling school in the far northwest suburbs, Hassan Township, which I don't even think exists anymore. I think it's part of Rogers or maybe Maple Grove.
Right.
But there was a wrestling school called MPW up there, Midwest Pro Wrestling, and it was really neat because as a part of the curriculum at all wrestling schools, you're not just learning how to take bumps. You're not learning how to do all these moves, but you're also learning how to create and develop a character that will get over with the crowd, either in a good way, you're John Cena,
Right.
or a bad way, you're John Cena.
Well,
Well, you're a good guy or a bad guy, you're a face or a heel. And so what they did is every Sunday night they had a live wrestling show as part of the school.
Sure.
And they'd have their it was mostly students, but there were also some just regular working indie wrestlers that would come up, and it was like $2 or something ridiculous like that.
Okay.
And there was a crew, some friends of mine and I, who it was between 3 and 8 people that came up from the Twin Cities every single Sunday,
Really?
and just went to these shows, and we got to know a number of the wrestlers and commentators and folks like that. And then eventually Eric Cannon, the anarchist Eric Cannon, he started doing shows down at First Avenue.
Okay.
A couple companies had done it before he did, but he really kind of figured it out. He figured out how to make not just a random wrestling show work, but a wrestling show that people would continue to come back for. And we would go to those and have a good time. And in late 2012, he called me up and said, "Hey, I got a question for you. Let's meet and have dinner." So we got together, and he said he was putting together this thing, and it was going to be awesome. And he wanted me to be the ring announcer, and I said absolutely. So he put together this show called WrestlePalooza that we do every January and June at First Avenue nightclub, the club from Purple Rain,
Right.
where we put a ring in the middle of the dance floor, and there's a little bridge that goes from the stage to the ring, and the entrance ramp is really the center of the stage. And we have pro wrestling, mostly the faster, high flying lucha libre style pro wrestling, and we have a band, usually a punk band,
Okay.
and burlesque, all
Sure.
in one big super show. And it's
There's a show in LA that's like Lucha Vavoom or something.
Yeah,
It sounds like
there's
that.
There's one in Denver, Lucha Libre and Laughs.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who did it first, but I think I'm pretty sure we do it best.
Sure. Fair enough.
But yeah, so it's like one of those, because I go and I self promote all the time. It's like, hey, come to my show, blah blah blah. And when I said I was doing wrestling, people were like, I don't know, I'm not a big. It's like, okay. So we have wrestling, yes, but we also have a band and we have burlesque. Now,
Sure.
Everybody I know likes
Yeah.
at least one of those things.
Yeah.
Most people will like 2 of those things, and the really cool people like all
Right.
3.
Yeah.
And for those, it was fun because, like, for those that didn't know about or had a negative or a neutral opinion about one or the other different items in the show, seeing those performances in the show, I think has been really good for all the bands. They sell lots of merch, sell lots of records. For the burlesque community, who get more people to their shows, and of course for wrestling, and it's just been super fun, and it's a whole different experience from roller derby, but also very similar. So
And for live wrestling, it's like a live band. Like there's a whole performance element to it. You're not just listening, to a CD. So even if you think of wrestling as like crotch chops and elbow drops or whatever, like you're experiencing a totally different thing. Have you ever been part of a storyline as the announcer?
Yeah.
You ever take a bump?
yeah, I had a feud with the aforementioned Mr. Huge, Playboy Pete Huge, that just started at the first WrestleMania or WrestlePalooza when he came out, and just while I was introducing him, he just came up and slapped me. He didn't plan for it or anything; he just did, and then backstage he goes, "Oh, hey, I'm sorry, I was just in the moment." I was like, "No, it's fine." And the second one, he said, "All right, this time I'm gonna haul off and hit you." I was like, "Okay," and knocked me out of the ring. And this woman who really thought it was far too real was like pulling me up, trying to get me out of there. It moved up, and eventually I took his finisher in the ring, and that was awful. Not from the actual move, but in the planning for it, the practicing how to fall flat and turn your head, and I went to the chiropractor for like 3 months after that. Just my neck was not in a
Did you wear a brace like the next time you
No,
appeared?
I should have. That would have
been
been great. That would have been great. And then eventually it culminated in him wanting to beat me up, and me talking back to him, and him kind of getting me in a corner until we did kind of a crossover, and my wife came up in her derby shirt and attacked him, threw him into a corner, and then got a helmet from the crowd, or a roller derby helmet from the crowd, and
awesome.
clocked him with that. So that was super fun. It's fun, but it's I have a lot more respect for each and every one of those folks who do it on a regular basis, just because you look at it and you think, oh, that it's kind of springy. It's like, it's not really springy.
Yeah. Fall down 40 times and see how you feel about it.
It's like 2x8s, and then there's some foam padding that's about an inch thick on top of that, and then some canvas on top of that. So it's not. You have to, it's very much like roller derby. Learning wrestling. The first thing you learn is how to fall, how to fall safely, how to fall effectively.
Yeah.
I would do more, maybe if I were still in my 20s, but I'm not. I'm not, decidedly not anymore.
Right.
So I totally feel it after I do anything stupid, like we have there's a brawl in the ring, and I jump in with the refs to try and pull people apart, and
Right.
I take an accidental elbow in the gut, and
Well, whenever I talk to local nerdy people, I like to talk about what they're into, like we're doing right now. But I also like to talk about CONvergence.
Yeah.
And I know I saw you at CONvergence last year. How long have you been going to CONvergence?
I was one of the founders of CONvergence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, like your history with the show.
I went to a local convention called Minicon. It was a big convention. Well, I say big now, but it is at its highest really is dwarfed by CONvergence at its highest. That started in the late 60s, and it was Easter weekend. And I went for quite a while, and eventually in the year, what was the year? It was 1997, I think it was. They said, all right, next year is not going to be this big. We're going to focus only on literary and fandom, and literary fandom. And other conventions might want to do this and might want to do other stuff, but we're not going to do it. And I thought this was dumb. And like you can only do when you are in your very early 20s.
Right.
You get together with a bunch of people that you'd never met before and say, well, we're just going to do this better.
Right.
And I don't know if we did it better. We did it differently.
Yeah.
And precisely 0 of us in charge had ever run a convention before. I think maybe one or two of us had been heads of departments at conventions before. It just kind of, and I think that actually helped a lot because we weren't stuck in, well, this is how it's always been done. We had no idea how it had always been done because we'd never done it before.
Right. Yeah.
So the idea was just to have a large science fiction convention where it was there wasn't a real focus other than the fact that, hey, this is vaguely science fictiony, let's do this.
Right.
In fact, one of the things that I like about it is I said that I would consider it a failure if I didn't actively hate at least a quarter of the panels that were going on.
Okay.
And at least a quarter of the people that were there.
Sure.
And it's partly that I'm just a big misanthrope, but it's also that there's, how boring would it be if everything had to be just for me?
Yeah.
There's other people with other interests, and it's even difficult nowadays when there's tons of stuff that I'm completely uninterested in that takes place.
Now it's 50%.
Yeah, and it still can be difficult now that I just attend mostly.
Yeah.
If there could be 3 or 4 different panels going on at the same time that I want to go to.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because there is a lot of stuff going on, and thank goodness I hate a lot of things because otherwise I'd be pulled in a million more directions.
That's one of the reasons that I love the show so much is that there's literally something for everybody.
Yeah.
And when I go, I'm representing my show a lot, but I'm also going to panels and seeing creators and stuff like that. And then there's just kids running around in cosplay and they're just going to parties and they're staying up all night and they're having fun, and I don't even know if they go to panels. And the old part of me is like, these kids should learn something, but at the same time it's like, who cares? Everybody's having fun. And there's a dance room that I hear booming every night but I'm too scared to go into, and there's just so many things to do.
Did you go last year? To see Information Society at
least?
No,
that's the same thing, because I was actually doing late night panels, and so we just kept hearing them, but we didn't get to go.
Yeah, but I like music, but I don't like it enough to go to concerts. I mean, it's cool that I can go to to WrestlePalooza and see bands that I really like there.
Yeah.
I've seen Dillinger 4 twice there, and they're just kind of like the biggest post-'80s punk to come out of the Twin Cities ever, and they played all over the world, and they're my age or maybe a couple of years older, and they're not playing as many shows, but they come to this because they have a great time and they put on a really fun show for people. Seeing Mike Micklin, seeing Prof, Lipstick Homicide, all these little punk bands and rap groups that are just. It's stuff that I wouldn't necessarily go to, but I get to see. And the same thing with Derby. There's we have a halftime band play, and it could be like a polka band, and they're fun. Or we just had this big horny horn-filled
sure.
soul group, and we've had an all-girl Clash cover band, and we had one of the School of Rock, as a kids playing.
Sure.
A Needle Diamond cover band, an ELO cover band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're called EL No. They're fantastic. But that that kind of gets my music interest as much as it is.
Well, hopefully we're going to do another live show for enterprising individuals this year at CONvergence.
Cool.
And we're going to do, so the theme of the entire show is reboots. So we're going to talk about Star Trek 2009.
Yeah.
Kind of in self-punishing way.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, do you like Star Trek 2009?
Yeah, I do.
I like it more now
Yeah.
that there's like discoveries on TV and we're kind of moving forward. Like if that
Yeah.
was all Trek was going to be,
Oh, sure.
now that it's just this kind of like fun little detour, you know,
Yeah.
and there will be more Trek, I'm like, I can appreciate it now.
You had
if it
2
was,
good movies that came out.
yeah, right, yeah. But as long as it's just like, okay, this is a fun kind of different
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams way to look at it. Well, let's get you going here.
Okay.
Let's send you off. So tell people where they can find you online.
Well, you can find me on the interwebs. Either let's see, the old Instagram is john.maddening. The Twitters is John Maddening, and on Facebook it is Yes That John Maddening,
Yes,
or
That John Maddening.
Yes That John Maddening. And then also next week, I believe it's going up next week, 20th, I believe. Again, I don't know when this is. It's probably up now. Just look.
Sure.
My teenage nephew and I have started our own podcast here called Generation Bond, because he and I are exactly 25 years apart, and he had only ever seen the Daniel Craig Bond movies.
Okay.
So we're going through in order.
Oh, that sounds so good.
And just kind of getting what his reaction is to them, but also
Sure.
kind
How old is he?
of he's 19.
19. Okay,
So
that's great.
yeah, so he grew up in a different time with different social mores.
Yeah.
And the idea of watching a character like that evolve quickly over the course of like a year of watching all of the films, and kind of get his idea of what he thinks the film is about just from the title and from the poster.
Yeah.
And
Would you believe a man walks on crocodile heads?
there's a slide
Strap
whistle in this
in.
one, you know?
Yeah.
And then also it's a bit about the kind of collective experience of watching movies with family.
Yeah.
And we have folks from various backgrounds on the show and talk about their experience of watching movies with family. We're recording our Goldfinger episode this weekend,
Great.
In which one of the guests is a member of the U.S. military, and according to her husband, she really hates it when people get things wrong about the Army.
Oh, okay.
Tactics and
Sure.
and weaponry and
How to guard
uniforms
Fort
and everything.
Knox
And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to hearing
Yeah.
her complain
That'll be great.
about the Army in Goldfinger. So that's called Generation Bond, and you'll be able to look for that on the Facebookies and stuff like that.
Sure.
And yeah.
And people should look online too for Roller Girls and
Yeah,
for First Wrestling.
Yeah, Minnesota Roller Girls are at mnrollergirls.com or at MNRG on Twitter and Instagram. And then First Wrestling is, you can just find that by searching F1RST on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Sure.
And just kind of keep your ear to the ground. We have multiple shows at First Avenue every year and at the Lindale VFW.
Okay.
And then we're traveling around and doing things in other cities and other states, but it's a good show.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.